Welcome back to a brand new video, coaster fans. Today I'm going to be ranking the B&M Inverted Coasters I have ridden. These get pretty mixed reviews in the coaster community. Personally, I really like them. I've ridden 8 to be exact. Without further ado, let's jump right on into it. Number 8 is Flight Deck at California's Great America in California. I rode Flight Deck this past August, and I liked what I rode, but the coaster was very short, and their transitions between the inversions were not as intense as I was expecting. A lot of people tend to overrate this coaster in my opinion, as I was severely underwhelmed. I rode this twice, once in the front and once in the second to last row. The back was definitely an improvement from the front, but not by much. Number 7 is Dueling Dragons, and I am referring to the red side. Now, I always found the red side of this coaster to be very boring and underwhelming, even after riding it probably over 50 times. The blue side of this coaster is way better by miles in my opinion, or was rather, and the intensity of the red side just didn't really compare with that of the blue. I mean, the blue one in my opinion didn't make sense to tear down because it was a great coaster. Red, I couldn't care less. 6 is Great Bear. This is my first B&M invert, and I really grew up with this coaster because I faced my fear of roller coasters on this. I remember that first ride where I was actually crying up the lift hill. Then at the top I felt a rush and I put my hands up and I loved the ride. If we're going by a sentimental value, this would probably be like the number 1 on this list, but in terms of actual ride experience, it's somewhere between unique and average. The drop on this coaster is pretty gradual. Most of the elements are fairly tame. My favorite element on this coaster is the 0G roll over where Super Duper Looper is, because you're twisting around using the terrain. Number 5 is Banshee at Kings Island. I went into Banshee expecting a lot more. Even though the elements were graceful and it is a pretty long ride, the B&M rattle was unbearable towards the back. There were only 2 elements that really stood out to me, and I'm referring to the first drop and the final inversion. This might have the stats, but man, it does not have the quality that I look for in a good coaster. Number 4 is the blue side of Dragon Challenge. I rode both sides of this coaster many, many times when it was open, including once when it dueled, so I have to say the blue side's much better than the red, and I sure have a lot of experience to prove that. The initial 0G roll was one of the most intense sequences I have ever felt on a coaster. The interlocking corkscrew always provided amazing near-miss elements, and the Cobra roll was so snappy. Even though some people think it was a little bit rough, I loved it. Number 3 is incredibly unpopular. It is Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great Adventure. I rank this coaster much higher than a lot of people. I love the intensity, the inversions are amazing, and you do have some nice theming at Great Adventure. It's a really amazing B&M. What keeps it from being my favorite on this list is the length. It is a very short ride. Number 2 is Raptor at Cedar Point. I tend to fanboy over this coaster quite a bit, and that's because all 4 times that I have ridden this coaster, the restraints have been super loose, and I love it. I love how whippy the transitions are. This monster really is the epitome of an old school B&M. Number 1 is Afterburn and Carowinds. This coaster, in my eyes, is perfect as far as inverts go. You have a nice, consistent intensity, and the 0G roll is one of the most intense and just a really awesome moment on any roller coaster I've ever ridden. I like how if you sit in the back, it feels like you're getting dragged through element after element. This is easily my favorite B&M invert and one of my favorite coasters, period. So that wraps up how I rank my favorite B&M inverts. If you've seen my top 20 coasters, you'll know that only Afterburn actually made it into my top 20. That's just because the issue with these inverts is that while they're good rides, they are pretty limited in what they can do. We know that there's one being built in 2021 in Sweden, so, they're definitely not a dead model yet, but they're pretty fun. So be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below about my rankings and this model in general. I will catch you all next time. Bye, guys.